Katie Berry, welcome to Reader's Labyrinth.
Thank you so much for having me, Frank. It's awesome to be here.
Awesome. Well, it's awesome to have you here as well. What's our weather like in Ontario, Canada?
Oh, actually, I'm not in Ontario. I'm out here in British Columbia.
British Columbia. Okay.
But I'm from Ottawa, though. So,
okay.
I've actually been out here for more of my life out here in the West than back East. And but here today, it decided to be the first snow of the season. So we've got about, 4 inches at least right now outside. So,
oh, man. Wow.
So it feels pretty claw-like in the area here. So.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. You know what? If South Carolina were to get 4 inches of snow, it would literally shut the state down. I mean, they would shut the interstate down. Our power lines would fall down. I mean, it would just be one disaster after another.
Oh, well, just look what happened to Texas there last winter, eh? Wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Whole power grid.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. Yeah, there are certain parts of the United States, and it seems like our infrastructure is that of a third world nation. Unfortunately, it can't take any kind of knocking around whatsoever. Well, so I heard you say that you spent the majority of your life in British Columbia. Is that right?
Actually, you're breaking up there. Unfortunately, I don't.
Oh, sorry.
Can you see me okay?
Let's see. Yes, I can. Can you hear me? Okay.
Well, you sort of keep breaking up and fading away there. There's no video.
Okay. Hold on a second. Hold on 1 second. We're gonna. So what I did is I switched us on low data mode, Katie. Can you hear me okay?
Okay. Well, hopefully. Could you ask what the other question again, please?
Okay. All right. Yep. I was going to ask where you grew up. I understand that you grew up in Ottawa, Ontario, and then you moved to British Columbia.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. I was just a teenager at the time, so it was a bit of a change to go from a city of hundreds of thousands of people to the Okanagan it was, which is sort of like a semi-arid desert. It's a nice area. It's sort of like, I guess you could call it the Arizona of British Columbia or something. So it's quite warm and dry in the summer. But it was quite a change to move to a place that only had at that time, 50,000 people. And we were living in a little town next to that only had about 3. So it was a change.
Okay, awesome. Whenever I think of Canada, I don't really think of a desert, part.
Well,
I guess I always kind of think of a bunch of snow and mountains, but
no, we have a little bit of everything up here. There's even a desert in Soyuz, which is just above Oroville, Washington, and it's got sand dunes and everything. It looks like you're in the middle of the Sahara. So it's not a huge part, but we actually have sand dunes and everything. So.
Well, that's incredible. The continent that you thought you knew. So
amazing.
Well, so when I was looking at your bio, it said that you are a longtime writer and voracious reader. And I was wondering, what are some of your favorite books?
Well, growing up, I started off reading stuff like Jules Verne and H.G. Wells, Daniel Defoe, with Robinson Crusoe and stuff like that. And Arthur Conan Doyle's Lost World was another one. Of course, Sherlock Holmes at the same time. I love Sherlock Holmes. And then Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. My brother had a Hardy Boys collection, so I read that too. And then when I started getting a little older, I got into more of the paperback craze. That was just, of course, paperback's been around for a while, but I started off with reading Stephen King and then some Dean Koontz, and then, and actually, I've had a lifelong love of horror thanks to my brother and my mother. Since my mom, she loved the Universal horror movies, the Frankenstein, and of course the Wolfman and Bela Lugosi's Dracula. So she loved all those, and she introduced them to me when I was just a little wee one at the time. And my brother, he actually had some of the EC comics, the whole horror comics, the whole horror series there. So he introduced me to those, and so that's sort of a bit of a round circular answer, but it was, I read a lot of books. I've read a lot of books, and I must have, I've so many that I at one time we had a used bookstore, so I would, I think it was about buy 20 books, used books, paperbacks, and then about a month later, not even that, probably a couple of weeks later, come back, I'd read them all and then trade them in and get a quarter of the value of what you just paid on them, and then pick out some more, and it was, I used to like that. Of course, keep the favorites. The library is always good, but you can't keep the books, unfortunately. So I guess there. I think I answered that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, for sure. And, just a little observation that I have, from speaking to authors, especially the horror genre,
Right.
is that I've always noticed that there's a community aspect to the genre. I mean, I can't tell you how many of my guests have said, you know what, my father was really into horror movies. My mother was into it. My older, my sibling was. And it's almost like this gradual level of initiation into the horror genre, and until they find their niche. And, for me personally, my mother, she always loved the Dracula movies. I mean, anything that had a vampire in it, she used to get.
Yeah.
And, so I grew up, watching the Bela Lugosi, his version of Dracula, Frank Langella, the Hammer films.
Christopher Lee. Oh God, Christopher Lee was awesome in that.
Oh yes, he was. He was terrifying, wasn't he?
He was very commanding, powerful. He's a very tall man, so yeah, he can certainly carry the role. For sure.
Oh yeah, well they say that he was what 6'5" or 6'6" or something like that, just towering.
Well, he played the first in the Hammer films, Frankenstein's monster too, so he probably didn't even need the big boots so much.
The boots, yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. So George Lucas and Star Wars, right? And I'm sure with you being a Christopher Lee fan, you probably know about this. But
Dooku, was that his name?
That's right, Count Dooku, I think. And George Lucas was an avid Christopher Lee fan. He loved the Dracula movies, and he says, I always wanted to cast him with a cape and a title of a count, and he did too.
Oh, there you go. Awesome.
Yeah,
it's good to have roles like that, exactly, to envision that stuff.
Heck yes, it is. Yeah, sure is, and he did too. What a commanding presence.
Oh,
what's your favorite Dracula movie? Out of curiosity.
Oh gosh, there's so many. Actually, I really enjoyed the Netflix series I was just talking about.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Me and my wife watched it. It was incredible.
It was.
Yeah.
It's really well done. And previously, though, I was thinking there was one with Jack Palance. I remember, gosh, in the 70s.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There was also another one. You mentioned Roy Langella, or no,
Frank Langella. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Dracula. Oh, gosh, my favorite Dracula. I would have, I gotta say, one I really liked was, what's his name?
Was it Gary? Was it Gary Oldman?
I Gary Oldman's. Yeah. He did such a great job. I'm a huge Gary Oldman fan, so. But I would have to say it's toss up between him and Christopher Lee. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I'm definitely going to have to second that. Whenever I was a child, I always thought that the Francis Ford Coppola version of Dracula was just an absolute masterpiece, and. And I'm quite sure that, if a child psychologist could talk to me about the influence of the colors, I mean, just the splatter of the movie, I mean, I wonder how, it influenced the developing mind.
Oh.
But but from all the Dracula movies I've seen, I think that Francis Ford Coppola's was the one that followed Bram Stoker's novel the closest, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely some stuff, with his backstory, being, fighting the Turks and the love story, I mean, I don't think that was in the book, but
not that I remember. No.
Yeah. Well, that was really, really good. It's really nice to meet a fellow Dracula fan. There's not very, very many of us these days.
No, there's not really.
It's probably
that's great.
And I've always liked my vampires with the metaphysics that was behind them. The old, the Victorian belief in vampires. Mm. And it seems like whenever they took the metaphysics away from them and it simply became a virus, and, you were passing on the bloodborne, this pathogen, those vampire movies just never really held my interest because they weren't really scary on a visceral level anymore. Yeah, it wasn't like,
where your whole mortal soul is in jeopardy. Now, you got the flu, it turned you into a vampire, But
exactly.
You haven't had your soul taken by the vampire's powers, Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely. Well, so I can kind of identify the horror genre, I think that it kind of grew in your childhood, and it definitely stayed with you into adulthood,
Oh,
as it has with me.
I have to tell you,
So
there's one thing that I didn't mention that was an influence as well as all the books and such. Was
I am listening.
my mother? She actually watched it with me, and I was only, I think, gosh, I don't want to say how old I was at the time, but it was reruns we caught, actually, not when it was first on, but back into the late 70s, the early 80s. Gosh, I was like 6 or 7 years old, but I loved all the. It was The Night Stalker with Darren McGavin.
Oh my
I
gosh.
loved
Yes.
that show. Only 3
Yes.
episodes ever made, but it was like, it's just so iconic. And I always loved the X-Files too. And then I discovered why when I discovered that Jeff Rice, who wrote them and created it, of course, he loved and grew up with the X-Files, or with
Oh yeah.
Darren.
With Kolchak, the Night Stalker. Yes, he did.
Great. Yeah. I mean, there's 20 episodes plus there's the 2 movies, the Night Strangler and the Night Stalker, it was called.
That's right. Yeah. And they did a remake of Kolchak the Night Stalker. It was Stalker or something.
Great. It was great. It was Stuart.
Yeah, it was.
Stuart Copeland starred in it, I think. Something like that.
And it was only 1 season too, I think. I don't think it ever got renewed.
It was so intense. I found it really awesome.
Yeah, it was.
Again, just it followed right along in the footsteps of its predecessor. It just lasted 1 season. That was it. So.
Oh man, we never found out what happened to his wife and daughter.
No.
Never found out those creatures that got him. Yeah, I was so sad.
Yes, yeah.
That was terrible. Well, so as I was saying before, I think I've identified. You definitely caught the horror bug from your mother,
Yeah.
and then you went into this genre. So when did you decide that you wanted to be a writer? And when did you sit down?
Quite early, because I remember there was grade 2. We had a writing assignment, and we had to write a little short story, and it was grade 2 or maybe it was grade 3. Anyway, so I wrote this 3-page thing. My dad actually typed it up for me, but then I drew a cover for this and put it in the binder, and I always remember, I still have it somewhere. It's a little white picket fence with a green. I drew it all and colored it in with my markers and such. It's a little green lawn with a white picket fence and a little sidewalk coming out onto the little path out to the sidewalk out front, and there's this big pool of blood leaking under the white fence onto the sidewalk out front. And of course, this is, as I say, I was 7 or 8 years old, but it's I want to write this story, and it was whatever a murder mystery an 8-year-old would write, but it was a fun thing. I actually think I got an A- on it or something, and the teacher, I liked the artwork and my cover that I made for it and everything. So it was quite I thoroughly enjoyed that sort of. I think that gave me the bug for wanting to write things, and then that was my earliest. And then I did a lot of short stories and such when I was a teenager. I never submitted anything, and then of course I got into my 20s, and then life got in the way, and had family and all that stuff. And then it was over the last about 15 years that I really got back into it, and then started with trying to do some short stories again and such like that. So, but one of the biggest influences, I have to say, that really helped me, spurred me into doing what I was only dreaming of doing, was NaNoWriMo, which is of course on right now.
Oh yeah.
So I wrote 4 novels through NaNoWriMo, and 2 of them I actually published. One being Claw, which we're talking about today, and the other is the Abandoned series that I released. Of course, that was only, I think, the first half of the first book that I'd written. So when I wrote the rest of the series in the present day now, then it certainly was a lot more work. But it was a 50,000 word novel. So.
And I'd like to take this opportunity to hold my copy of Claw up. And I would like to let my viewers know that there will be a link in the show description that they can click on, and it will take you straight to the page where you can purchase a copy. And as soon as I'm finished with it, I think I've got about 100 more pages left to go. So there's definitely going to be some spoilers for me, maybe. I don't know.
The last 100 pages is some of the best. I mean, I like the whole novel myself, of course, since I wrote it and enjoyed it all. But I think those last 100 pages, you're in for, as I say, quite a roller coaster ride of fun. So there's a lot of humor. I don't know if you've noticed that in my writing too. I like
there is, yeah. There's a little bit of slapstick, but I like it.
The funny with horror and comedy, as you know, they go so well together because the emotions of terror and I guess I find them somewhat linked, you know, fear and happiness. You know, they're such strong emotions.
Not only that, but, you know, if you're someone who's of sane mental state, and if you're not like suffering from like a drug addiction, you know, a substance abuse or something, then, you know, and well, I guess the word I'm looking for, it isn't really like normal, but to use the term normal, if you're a normal person, this is how I expect someone to react, you know, to a really, you know, a horrific scenario, like you present your characters. Because, you know, I've noticed that a lot of the writers where, you know, they kind of, you know, put alcoholism or substance abuse, and I'm not talking about any guests that have been on Reader's Labyrinth. Okay. I'm talking about the other folks.
Oh, I know,
okay.
I know.
But, yeah. But, the ones that kind of give their characters these kind of flaws to them, you don't really see the humor. But what I like about yours is like, hey, you know what? A lot of the well-adjusted adults that I interact with on a daily basis, this is their kind of humor.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's this kind of, you know, we're going to deal with life. It has a practical, you know, a punchline to it, and you know, it just came across as very authentic to me. That's what it did.
Well, I wrote a lot of it. I like a lot of the people I know. People like not necessarily those characters, but people similar to that I've worked with in and around the Kootenays here in British Columbia, where I live, which is where Claw is, of course, set. Lawless is, in fact, I think about 100 miles maybe away, if that, from where I live. So, I mean, fictionally speaking.
Has there been any seismic activity near it?
Not recently.
Just wondering.
Not
Okay.
recently, but you never know. That's the thing. As I mentioned in the novel, there's all the they could have a super thrust, make a thrust earthquake at any point. You know, really, which would affect probably the whole West Coast. So,
is there a fault line? I guess that runs through Lawless, or
there is. Yeah, actually, there's fault lines throughout British Columbia because there's a lot of volcanic activity. The Okanagan, where I lived when I first came out here, has got a dormant volcano right in the heart of the valley. It's a big lava dome cap, and they call it Mount Boucheray. So,
oh wow,
yeah.
What a sight that must be, man! This just blasted landscape.
Yeah. It's a beautiful lake. Right?
Yeah, I can't even.
It's 80 miles long, and they have a monster in the lake called Ogopogo. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
I am so interested in this. I love like a paranormal stuff, anything with cryptids. I mean, I'm so into that kind of stuff.
Me too. And like Ogopogo, of course, he's very similar to Nessie over at Loch Ness and actually both lakes are very similar to each other. They're both glacial lakes, right? And landlocked now, of course. And they're saying that at one time that lake, connected to other spots and all. So, but it's over 1,000 feet deep in some places because it's quite
1,000 feet.
1,000 feet.
Man.
Yeah. They actually had some bodies that they pulled out of that lake over the years, I remember, and they were perfectly preserved, right? And one person had been down there for like 20 years. They found them. Don't know what happened to them. It was very unfortunate, but very little composition because the water is so cold, right?
Man, that's so cool. I love stories of like local lore and myths like that and monster sightings. I mean, it just really gets the imagination firing off.
The native legends about that go back hundreds of years, and they actually used to offer sacrifices to the lake and to the lake monster before crossing it. So,
I would too. I do not want to cross the lake and then end up at the bottom of 1,000 feet.
Well, it's over a mile. It's a very wide lake. I mean, nothing like what's in Ontario, of course, but with Lake Huron or something like that, it's maybe a couple miles wide, but it's over 80 miles long, as they say. So it's beautiful.
So has this lake monster ever served as a muse for any of your writing, your ideas, or anything like that?
A little bit, actually. In my latest novel that I'm writing now, it's the 3-novel series called
Labyrinth.
And it's that's. I think Ogopogo was a little bit in some of these. I don't know if you've had, there's a couple of novelettes right now, Caleb Cantrell and Kitty Welch, part of the Claw Emergent. They're just like to give people a taste of what it's going to be like. And that's, there's creatures in the Caleb Cantrell, which are now in the Claw Emergence novels that I'm working on. And it's some unknown black beast sort of thing. So, yeah.
I am fascinated on that. It sounds awesome. I can't wait for it. Well, so where did the idea for your novel Claw come from?
Well, there's a few sources actually. One of the first things I found, it was one of those things I thought to myself, talking about the earthquakes. It's like, gosh, living in this area, what would it take to be totally cut off? Because we get some good snowstorms sometimes. In the past, you get like 2 feet of snow or something. It's just like, I'm sure people in Colorado have the same problem where stuff doesn't move and freight doesn't get shipped and all that stuff. So, but I was wondering what would happen if there was an earthquake and, let's say, more than just snowfall, we got rock to get rid of. And you can imagine if there's a mega thrust earthquake down the coast in Vancouver and Seattle area, and that shook up into the interior, and all the mountain passes with the rock on the side that would fall down, and they'd probably be a week digging through to get any ground transport through to these communities like where I live. Because if there's passes on either side, and if those are closed, well, although fortunately we can go through trail and come through the U.S. and come around that way, but through Canada, yeah, you could get like. And so I think, well, what if a valley is like that, but they have no way out? If there's only one way in, sort of thing, it's like so there was that, and then I was thinking to myself, well, actually, then I had a dream. And it was, I was in our local recreation complex that we have here, and in my dream, I was inside it. There was a gigantic, monstrous bear trying to rip through into the recreation complex there. It was like glass and metal and all that, which I actually wrote that dream in the sequel to Claw Resurgence. That there's that scene. I thought, well, I didn't have it in the first Claw novel because it was already getting kind of long at 540 pages. But then I thought, well, I wanted to write a sequel, and then I thought to myself, well, what better than to include that from my dream, which I did. So there's a big iconic battle scene inside the complex. I can't give you any details because it will spoil your surprise, but there are cryptids and stuff like that involved. So.
Oh, I love that. Oh man, I can't wait. I am totally psyched about that.
And there's actually another part in Claw that you're reading. Have you gotten as far as Edna O'Toole yet?
Yes, I have. So is she still alive? Let's see. Yes, she is.
Good for her. Good for her.
She's still alive.
Not that I want to spoil it.
Oh boy. Oh no.
But that being said, what was the point of that with Edna O'Toole? I'm trying to think where I've derailed my train of thought. I've gone down a rabbit hole, I think. So.
Good. Let's follow the rabbit hole all the way through the lava tubes. It's all good.
Oh yes, that's right. The bottomless lava tubes. Yeah.
I love the imagery of it. The atmosphere, the fog. Especially the cave. Oh my gosh! And like the cave kind of reminded me of scenes from The Land That Time Forgot. Whenever the German submarine like went through the ice cap and it came on the other side. Just like this portal almost. I mean, I was really kind of fascinated in like the idea of like these long drops. And there's gold everywhere. I mean, it was almost like dragon's gold from like a medieval tale or something. And there's a monster that's guarding the treasure up there, all the gold. That was a really great image that was going in it.
Cool. Well, I mean, I've always been fascinated by caves, of course, and we're talking about geology, and we haven't been talking about it, but I've always been interested in that, and paleontology too, of course, and all that stuff. So.
Oh yeah. Well, so when I was reading Claw, I really enjoyed the sense of isolation. And I was wondering, what's your trick for creating the eerie atmosphere that really carries the reader throughout most of the book? I mean, from, the very first the chapter, you have 4 guys who are isolated, the partiers. And then, even when it kind of takes you into the city of Lawless itself, there's like a psychological isolation.
Yes.
And was that an intentional thing, or was that just, hey, this is just kind of how the story unfolded?
Well, I mean, I wanted to have the fog. That was the other thing too. I had to have fog because where I live here in Castlegar, there's an airport, and it gets closed so often in the wintertime because of this valley cloud that comes in and it just socks everything in, right? So I wanted to have the fog as part of the story because I thought, well, if there's an earthquake, maybe it's just in the interior. They could just fly some choppers in there and fly in supplies. I'm thinking, well, no, if there's a whole bunch of fog that they can't even, fly a helicopter in, let alone an airplane to drop cargo or something. So that's why it was. Oh, I forgot to mention when I had that dream about the bear at the complex. To go do a quick rabbit hole, I was walking my dog one winter. It was around February, and there's a huge old pile of slush next to it at the complex. And this was after I had the dream, and it was next to a van. And there's a van next to this big pile of slush. Now, man, that almost looks like a big hulking, monster. And then my dream came back to me again. And then I started thinking, gosh, if you had something like that eating people, and they're like can't get away from it because they're trapped. How would you get trapped? And then I started thinking about earthquake and then the avalanches, and it was all a whole different things converging.
Man, what a terrifying setup for a story. Like you're trapped in this, in a limited area, and there's like this apex predator.
Yes.
Which is really an understatement. I mean, if there's something higher than an apex predator, but man, I mean, really, really cool story. I really enjoyed it. And whenever I was reading your story, I had a question that kind of popped in my mind, and that's, are you an outliner, or are you someone that just kind of starts on page 1 in chapter 1 and just kind of charges forward with it?
Actually, I have a great answer for that. But just to get back to about the isolation and such, what draws the people in, what I find when I'm doing writing a scene, I want to, I have a little note that says at least 3 of 5 I have, and that's next to my computer when I write, and I try to include at least 3 of the 5 senses in every chapter I write.
Oh, okay.
That's something that the person is maybe usually it's at least 2 and maybe 3, maybe 4 sometimes. But so, you have to have the sights. You can describe what they're seeing, but then what they're feeling. Are they cold? Are they hot? Are they hungry? Are they horny? Or whatever, whatever they're doing. Mm-hmm. But to sort of get inside their mind a bit, and I think that really helps too. If, you're because you're there with them, then you're inside their head and in the situation they're in, right? So, but the isolation, I've always been interested in that because BC here is a big province, and it certainly, you can go out in the forest and there's nothing around for hundreds and hundreds of miles. So yeah, it can be quite an isolating experience, especially living in this little town where I live here. It's only got a population of 8,000. So, and that's what the size of Lawless, right? So, yeah,
What I love about it is the physical isolation as you get closer to where the beasts are and the monsters and the cryptid. Yeah, when you get into the town of Lawless itself, it's like the reader is encountering the psychological isolation. And for me, I think a big part of that kind of comes from the corruption that is strongly hinted at in the novel as well. And it kind of plays out because hey, the evil deeds that are private, it really affects the social contract and the community pact as a whole. And there's this psychological oppression, and you really see it when the head, whenever the police chief, when he comes up to, let's see, I'm trying to recall her name. She is Christine Moore.
Christine Moon.
Yeah.
Moon.
Christine Moon. That's it. Yeah. And whenever he puts his hand on her shoulder, and it was a transference of the psychological oppression that exists in the town itself. But of course, she acquits herself very, very well in that situation.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Love that effect on it.
Yeah.
So,
no, it's so true. It's a very, very big part. And one of the biggest things and I think maybe that also plays into it. I love watching right now. I've been watching them on YouTube. These back rooms videos that all various people are doing. It's that shared mythology thing. of and that's all liminal, what they call liminal spaces, right? Which are large.
Oh, yeah.
Like an airport when there's nobody around and there's no flights. It's just this big, it's an empty, and it's not really serving its purpose, and it seems kind of strange because there's nobody there, and it's huge and big, and yeah.
I love that. There's a podcast called Liminal Lands. Have you heard of them or him? I guess.
No, I'm not sure. I don't think so.
It's really, really good. Whenever we get off of here, I'm going to have to send you a link to it, but it's an audio drama, and it's about this guy, and he does like some kind of weird portal time slip into like, it's the same place where he lives, but everything is different, and there's no one around, and it's a real heavy atmosphere kind of a story, but I'm really, really enjoying it. But whenever you said the liminal lands, it kind of, it triggered me, but yeah.
That's right up my alley, so I'll have to definitely check that out. Yeah.
Definitely. I will send you a link to it.
Now, you asked me, again, you have to excuse my voice for anybody watching the video. Here, when the weather changes, it just snowed today. We have about 4 inches of snow, and I have to use an asthma inhaler, a couple of them, and they make my voice very hoarse, and so I do a lot of throat clearing and everything, so you have to...
Well, please feel free to take a sip of water or something, or if you need a break or anything, Katie, just let me know.
Oh, I'll let you know.
That's all good.
I'm doing okay. I've got my glass of root beer here, so I'm okay.
Okay, awesome. That's all we need then. Well, so my previous question was, do you outline your stories, or do you just do you jump in the driver's seat and then go?
Let me just take a look what I made a bit of a note about that.
And okay.
But yeah, no, I'm a pantser. I'm not a plotter. I guess you've heard the expression pantser, or some people say pantster or pantser, where you're...
That's right. I've heard that. Yeah.
Writing by the seat of your pants. And I did. That's what Claw was all pantser. Totally. And it worked out really well. I mean, although it altogether, the novel took me 4 years to write. So it was pantser.
Oh, wow.
I came back and I fixed it all. Right. So, yeah. And Abandoned was a pantster with some plotting thrown in a little bit. I try to sort of sometimes sit down and just type a couple of lines in, thoughts of what I want to see maybe happen in the chapter, right? Something that might work or might be interesting. And then I'll write the chapter, and then I'll go back and look and say, oh, well, check. Because, all my little thoughts, just to give me something to chew on while I could. And sometimes, though, it's like, well, what am I going to write here? And then it's like, oh, okay, I've got this character that I want to explore a little more. And I sort of close my eyes and I envision, like watching a movie, the start of the scene. Well, where does the scene start? Like, is there a bell over the door ringing and somebody comes in, or whatever it's going to be, right? So I do a lot of that and I treat it very much like I'm directing a movie, of course, since, you are placing your actors, your characters, and giving them an action to do, or though sometimes, as I've mentioned to other people, they definitely do take on a life of their own, too, with some of the decisions they make when you get further into the novel. It's like they just start doing their thing, and it makes it very interesting, especially when you're pantsing things and you're not plotting too much, right? Just to see where it's going to go, because some people take it to the extreme, and then they have so much that they've plotted that there's no spontaneity in what's happening in the story. Then, if you know what I mean, it can be so.
Oh yeah, and plus, with the plotters, I can normally spot them because there's always a kernel of a great idea, and that's normally why I ended up buying the book to begin with.
Right.
But whenever I'm reading it, it's like I can just kind of sense the contrived nature of the characters and like their decisions, and A doesn't flow to B and then C. It's like, okay, here's A, then F, then G, and it just kind of has, this kind of, I don't know, surface level feel to them. But whenever, a good novel to me is where a writer just kind of writes the story as it comes to them. And their characters are very authentic, and everything just flows together so well. I love it like that.
Well, take a look at Stephen King. He's been doing that his entire career. So,
yes, he has.
And I got to say, everything I've written has been basically pantsed, except now writing. I was going to with the multi-part series, though, like the Abandoned series, which is 4 books, and that's one that I did do definitely more figuring. What are the major events for each book, right? So, and doing as opposed to, I don't know if I could have pants that one, but an individual novel standalone like Claw or Resurgence even, that's definitely that's a pants. But writing Claw Emergence now, that's got a bit of plotting going on because I'm thinking, well, I want to again, what's going to happen here so I can go to here and then, I'm almost doing it like a 3-act play, the 3 novels, right? So.
It almost seems like you found the perfect balance then, between plotting them out and just kind of, writing it as it comes to you. Mm-hmm. And Claw, I mean, very, very authentic writing, and I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, it's got some cool little, some elements floating around in it. And so some of the elements, and this is a question about, I guess, a wider body of the work that you're producing. I kind of see a little bit of some small town corruption in there, some weird geography, which I totally dig. I love the weird geography aspect of it. We have some cryptids, and are these staples of your work as a whole? Like whenever I get into the Abandoned series and more Claw, am I going to be seeing more of those elements in there as well?
For sure. Okay. And plus Abandoned, now you're only in Claw right now, but when you get into the Abandoned series, it's a shared universe between Claw and Abandoned.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool.
Stuff that you read in Claw, you'll learn more about what you've read or events that are referred to in Claw. You'll learn more about them when you read the Abandoned series. And then when you read the Abandoned series, you're learning a bit more about the history of Thomas Sinclair, who is featured prominently in the prequel that I'm writing now. So you're learning, and that's what a lot of people have said, they just love how it's all sort of linked together, right? So, and actually, my novel after Claw, Claw, next year I'm going to release in the fall Claw Resurrection, which is the 3rd.
Oh, okay.
Resurgence is the 2nd, then it's Resurrection. And I'm toying with the title right now. I'm thinking like Claw Retribution would be the 4th one, and that one's going to be a crossover novel that's going to bring Lively and Minerva into the lawless area for a big finale.
All right, man.
And then, of course, Lively Dead March will have other stories he'll be doing, of course, too. And I'm not sure how many more stories I could have in the Claw universe after 4 books. So.
Well, I'm just trying to wonder how you managed to keep all of this straight. Is there like a master document on your computer? Do you have cards or something? Is there a whole wall with like a bunch of writing on it and posters? I'm just trying to think how you can keep all these plots and everything.
Honestly, most of it's up here. I don't.
Oh, okay.
I do have. I got to say, I do have notes especially when I'm wanting to. When I'm starting to write a new book, I want to do some research and I'll make notes about stuff. And I have this thing called Concepts on my iPad, which is it's a virtual workspace, and you can bring in documents and like whatever videos. And Mimsy, you can't go up there, honey. My cat wants to get up here where the iPad is. Here, he wants to eat some food. Here,
the riding kitty cat. There it is. I knew it.
Don't knock the iPad. There, you can have your food right there. Okay. Sorry about that.
The star of the show, right there. What's her name or his
Mimsy.
name?
Mimsy.
Mimsy. Oh, Lord.
I named her after Mary Tyler Moore's. The little cat at the end.
Yeah.
Meow. I was thought, well, what's the name of that cute little cat? Oh, it's Mimsy. Well, that's my cat.
It's Mimsy.
I'm sure. I'm sorry. Where were we?
We were talking about the plot lines and everything and how you managed to keep everything straight. And you were telling me about some software or an app or something that you have it on.
Well, I find that the virtual whiteboards are great for plotting things out. I'm just going to get ready. I'm getting ready. I'm reaching out, getting ready to catch my iPad when the cat tries to knock it over here.
This is funny. I love it.
It's like, there's a thumbnail. Yeah. Mimsy, what are you doing? Don't go down there. Yeah. You can see the little camera jingling. Maybe not. I actually have good optical image stabilization.
Attack of the Kitty Cat. This is the real Claw. This is the real Claw right here. That's it.
She rules the roost, that kid.
Yeah, she does.
But let's see. Now, liminal spaces. We covered that. Oh gosh, I just lost it again. I actually have it here. Let me see. Do I?
I can bring us around really quick for us. So I was wondering about the future of the Claw series, and you've kind of hinted at it. Now, whenever you and me were talking offline, I think that there's some special news, right, along the Claw front.
There
And I'm
is.
not sure how much I want to reveal. I'll just kind of leave it up to you. Is what I'll do.
Thank you. Well, it's something that's actually another little bit of a story, another little rabbit hole too. When I wrote the novel Claw, I completely saw it as a movie, like an '80s popcorn kind of, the movie. Now that I've thought about it, after I've written Claw, the movie that I can think that closely, the most closely embody the vibe of what Claw is the movie Tremors with Kevin Bacon.
Oh my gosh, yes, love it.
Fred Ward, classic movie, and it's funny, it's scary, and that's what Claw is. It's like and people have described it like it's an '80s popcorn flick. But when I wrote it, I had that in mind, that I wanted to see it as a, I sort of envisioned it as a movie, all the scenes, because as you've read it, and it's very, I was going to say cinematic, but I mean, you're seeing it in your head, of course. But again, people say they can really see they feel like they're there seeing it all. So that's, especially I've had people that have never experienced snow. There's one guy he lives in South Africa. He's a huge fan, and he said he has never experienced snow, but he's read about it in my novel, and he thinks he knows what it would, be like to be cold. And there I've gone down a rabbit hole. No, let's see, we're talking about rabbit holes.
I love it. That's a great that's a great rabbit hole to go down. Yeah.
Oh, it
I
is.
like that.
And
That's pretty cool.
But I wanted to mention, what was I talking about? Oh gosh. Oh, the special news, of course. That was my rabbit hole. So what's happened is I envisioned it as a movie, and actually, when I was writing it, I had certain actors envisioned in the roles, such as Austin Murphy. And I'm thinking, who could I have that would be a Canadian actor that would be ideal for that? Who'd be at the right age? I'm thinking, I could think of one person who'd be kind of funny, like Austin is, and such. Of course, is Ryan Reynolds. So
Ryan Reynolds, yeah.
he could be Austin Murphy.
Okay, yeah.
And actually for the mayor, I envisioned could be the mayor, but because he's a little young for it still. But Nathan Fillion, he could perhaps.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But so I wrote it with an eye to seeing it, like I sort of saw it as a movie as I wrote it. So anyway, the news is I had an email come on to through my website about 6 months ago from a gentleman who's a literary scout and asked about the rights to Claw. And the audiobook rights I already sold, actually, back when, just after Claw came out. Tantor Media, who's I guess the largest independent audiobook producer in the States, and they approached me and said, "Are the audiobook rights available?" And I said, "Yes." So they bought all my books, and plus 4 of my books that I hadn't even written, they bought up front from me, which was awesome. So, but what happened was, it was a similar situation, and I had this gentleman say, and I'm thinking, okay, sure. So he put the word out, and he found a company. I can't say who it is right now, but it's a major streaming service. Is very excited about it. They've got a production company lined up now, and I'm finalizing the contract this week for. It'll be coming to us, hopefully, if Hollywood, I guess they say things can be kind of, there's the cat sniffing the camera. But Hollywood can be, you never know until it starts shooting, right? Whether something will get made. So what's happened is, and that's how the contract worked. I didn't know that, but they'll cut me a check, I guess, for the agreed amount when the first. See? Aha!
There's a kitty cat.
I caught it. Oh my gosh.
I love it.
So they don't cut the check until the very first day of shooting. So it's like, okay. So I'm hoping.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Soon. I guess there's a whole bunch of different stuff. I've never been involved in a Hollywood contract before, but this is very exciting. So I'm officially. I'm announcing it, but I can't really say too much because I don't know what I can say. I have to find out still what I can share, right? Since it's not quite, they're not filming it yet. It's still coming together. Right?
Katie, that is amazing news. Oh my gosh, what a success story. Wow. That's incredible. Yeah.
Well, when I wrote it, I thought, yeah, I hope I want it to be a movie. I sort of willed it and wished it and projected that to the world, right? Thinking, I
Oh,
like to try to
awesome.
imagine
Yeah.
things, right? Because I thought, I want this to be a movie. It's going to be a movie. And now I'm, cross my fingers and everything that it's going to continue. As I say, out of the blue, the literary scout, he let them read it at this major studio that said, oh, we like that. And then they let somebody read it at this other streaming service. And they said, oh my God, we've been looking for something like that. And then, so here we are.
What if they completely change your story? Like,
well,
what if the movie comes out and it's like,
you hear that happening sometimes, but I'm hoping one of the things is that the person that I was in contact with can't tell you, she, as another lady there, she actually is a huge fan of that kind of thing. And I said, and when I told her about what, the vibe that the Claw movie would be is Tremors, and she's like, oh my God, she's like totally on the same page. So I'm thinking that they might treat it with it's a popcorn movie, but the respect that it's due. But I think it sounds like they might get the vibe, and I even talked to them about filming locally in the area here. There's like the two towns on either side of where I live are the cities that I based Lawless on. So, and of course where I live too.
What if they film it in South Carolina? And I'm like, what? Why are they filming it here?
They'd have a lot of fake snow, that's for sure. Yes.
Well, now, so part of the Appalachian Mountain Range, it actually goes down into three parts of the counties in the upstate, and there's some snow up there.
Oh, okay. I
believe, yeah. So I mean, but I mean, of course, I mean, I'm sure anyone living in Canada can tell. Wait, that's not Canada. That's something. but it could probably fool an American audience, I think.
Oh, it's amazing.
That'd be funny.
That's the first thing I watch a thing as as a person who experiences snow quite often. It's like, oh, that's not real.
Yeah, I bet. Sure. Well, that is incredible news. As a matter of fact, I can't think of any of my questions that can really top that. I think, first of all, congratulations. I mean, that is the dream of so many authors out there.
And I'm literally, I'm not taking it for granted. I feel so blessed that this has happened to this point. And of course, and I'm still always looking to the future, which I think a lot of writers always do. And I'm looking to my other series, Abandoned, which I've had so many people that have read that and reviewed that say, this needs to be a Netflix series or this should be on Amazon,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I'm thinking, let's keep thinking those thoughts too, people. So, I would love to see my other project, definitely.
Well, awesome. So before I let you go, I have three more questions for you.
Okay.
So, to kind of shift gears a little bit mentally.
Okay.
And I was wondering, what do you think about cryptids? Do you think there could be anything to those stories we always seem to come across about strange creatures? I just wanted to know what your thoughts, no right or wrong answer.
When you talked about I actually did write something down about cryptids, and that's actually my brain.
Yes, this is probably a good answer then.
Let's see, cryptids. Where did my cryptids go? Actually, yeah, I got this. You think my notes being right? I actually have some comments about writing and such too, which is the section. Oh, here we are. I guess I didn't write as much as I thought. I thought I had a paragraph I'd written about them, but what I in a nutshell, I mean, they are definitely something that I think every legend, every bit of folklore has some kernel of truth and basis in reality somewhere, whatever it may have been initially. Who knows, right? But so I like to think that there is a chance. I like to think that the Mothman could exist, or the Slender Man, or any of this stuff, and perhaps even the talking about back rooms and such, with having a shared folklore and a shared consciousness on something like that. almost think that it's possible that something like that could come into being through the power of belief in it. That's getting into a whole metaphysical ball.
Well, I like it. That's exactly my vibe, kind of going down that metaphysical path. And I'm not sure if you watched my interview that I did with Dr. Jeffrey Kripal, but I've read all of his books, especially about the paranormal and the esoteric. And there's this concept that the paranormal is us writing ourselves. And it kind of delves a little bit into Greek philosophy, especially solipsism, I think, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yes. But the idea is that, these entities, these things, or these experiences, is that they need us to perceive them to come into our reality.
Yes.
And so it's like, by the power of the human imagination, it's almost like a doorway that's giving form to like this Platonic essence that's coming from somewhere else. And I asked Dr. Kripal what he thought about the UFO phenomenon. And I stubbornly refuse to call them UAPs. I think that that's the American military intelligence, the establishment, the sanitized term that they came up with, and UFO, I just don't like to use.
Yeah, UFO, yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. And he said that, and he says, Frank, and he says they're not material, and he says this is a spiritual phenomenon, and he said with all of the sightings that have been reported to the government, they're hand in hand with a lot of the experiencers seeing their dead relatives, seeing Bigfoot, seeing strange creatures, having weird dreams, these weird experiences that kind of get filtered out of these reports. And so what you just said there, about the collective awareness of humanity has something to do with this. Yeah, I mean, I think that there really could be something along those fronts.
Yes, I think it has to be.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So my other question, again, and kind of shift gears again, and I always like to ask the authors that have the best imagination that question too, about what they think about the weird and the strange. So that was a great answer. What advice do you have, especially you experiencing your success? What advice do you have for our aspiring writers who are probably watching this right now, or they're going to watch it whenever it uploads?
I have 3 paragraphs on that. So.
Please take your time. No time limit whatsoever. I am all ears.
Well, actually, my advice is to write. Keep writing. Do it every day. It's so important. That I found that when I've taken some people say, oh no, you need to take a break, because you're going to burn yourself out. And so I took a month off in the summer, and I found it so hard to get back into the swing of things. I was still doing research on stuff and some little short story things, but I wasn't doing my, the actual novels and such. So I found that writing every day is very important. And also, of course, write the sort of stuff you want to read, or what you do read. Don't try to write elven fantasy if you like zombies, perhaps. You know what I mean? They do say write to market, but my stuff when I wrote, it's like I wrote that it was first of all written for me. Claw is what it's because one of the things I said, there's never been an exciting action thriller, whatever movie or novel that I knew of written in the area that I live in. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to write it, obviously. So, which I did. But yes, one of the biggest things I'd say is to try to ground your story to help with the believability and to bring people into it. Grounded reality, as I say, the senses, bring your senses, the sights, the 5 senses into it. The more you ground it in reality, the stronger your foundation, the more bizarre and unexpected you can be with the rest of your story, right? So if it seems very solid and realistic, and then all of a sudden, you throw in that out of left field thing, and it's like, oh my gosh, what happened? Now, let's see, what else do I have to say here? That is, unless it's a different genre, such as science fiction and fantasy, you can make those characters still believable, of course, but you have to look for different things to because it's not your everyday world, that it's completely different. So you have to look more at what you're going more into the characters, I suppose, then, if that's what it would be. And actually, one of the things I found that, write for yourself and enjoy what you're writing. If you're not enjoying what you're writing, if you're not making yourself laugh or cry or yourself scared is a bit of a hard one. I found that when I write stuff, it's like, is it scary enough? Then I'll tweak it some more, and they'll go, is it scary enough? And then I have people write me and say, oh my God, that was so scary. And I'm thinking, oh, good, yay. Because to try to scare yourself when you're writing it is a different thing than reading it and going, oh, and having that your reaction to it, of course. But write for yourself and write for what you want to read. And I wanted to read this novel, so that's why I wrote it. And the Abandoned series, set in an abandoned resort where almost 100 people disappeared in the blink of an eye 40 years ago. I'm thinking, what a great hook that would be. Like, what kind of a story? That'd be awesome. I'd like to read that story. So it's like, I'm going to have to write it, obviously. So that's the sort of thing. Write what you want to read is a big thing. And one of the things I see so much with a lot of writers is they so focus on just being published in what us self-publishing people call legacy publishers, like Random House, Penguin, or whoever it's going to be, Simon Schuster. And that's great. I mean, that would be a fabulous thing, but it depends what you're looking for. I've heard a lot of writers that have been legacy published, and they don't make that much. They're only going to get about 10 or 15% royalties on their work because of everything else that's involved. But then again, they can get a huge, maybe, if they're lucky and they're doing well, a nice advance. But I find that that is a dream I still have, perhaps, depending what they, because I do fairly well with my writing right now, knock on wood, and it's don't let yourself be dissuaded because you can't seem to sell your novel to a publisher, let's say. Not that I never even tried that with Claw. I liked the story. I thought it was good. I thought, well, I'm going to just go right and put it on Amazon because, I've been hearing good things about Amazon Kindle and all that such. So it's like, why not? So that's what I was aiming for. I didn't really consider even looking for an agent or a publisher, since I thought, well, I'm going to self-publish. And it's worked out well now, pretty much. Things seem to be plugging along. But some people, that's what they want. They don't consider themselves a true published author until it's, through, and that can be 50 rejection letters later, and maybe, or maybe not. Maybe the first agent you send your novel to will be the one that says, hey, I never tried that with Claw. And as I say, it's worked out. So let that be some inspiration for people that, don't necessarily have to think that they need to, that being published by, it's, I guess, a derogatory term if people look up to that. It's legacy publishing, traditional publishing, I guess is the word I should use. But don't let that be your only carrot dangling in front of you as you're writing, the thought that this is going to be selling 1 million copies and it'll be on the New York Times bestseller list. Maybe you'll get there eventually, and maybe I'll have a publisher approach me saying, we'd like to, or maybe I'll approach one and say, here's my track record, look what I've done. Would you like to represent me to an agent, perhaps, right? So there's all sorts of different ways, I think, you can get into the writing world, and which is great, the way it is these days. And now with graphic novels, actually that's something I still have the rights to, and on my website, if anybody goes there, there's a 5-page preview of the graphic novel that I'm I'd love to release a graphic novel of Claw, and do it as a Kickstarter campaign. So that's one of my big goals, and I'm seriously looking into that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I should have mentioned here. Gosh.
Well, everything that you just said, Katie, is probably, the top, piece of advice for writers out there. And I especially like the part where you have such a positive and open mind when it comes to getting your work out there into readers' hands. And I think, it really comes across in your business model and your interactions with other writers on Twitter, of which I will have a link to everything in the show notes, your website, your Twitter handle, your social media, and all that good stuff. But, for all the writers out there who are, you have this manuscript that's sitting in, on your hard drive, and you've been sending it to agents trying to get it published. Please give Amazon a shot. Oh my gosh, there are so many brilliant writers out there, so many works out there that I've just thoroughly enjoyed. I mean, these writers have sent my mind and my imagination spinning on my lunch break.
And if it wasn't for self-publishing, you never would have ever seen their stories. So,
Oh yeah.
the world might
Exactly.
Red Claw, or hopefully see the movie maybe.
Yeah. Fingers crossed on that. Oh man, do you know what? Whenever you hear something on that front, if you ever want to go on Reader's Labyrinth and talk about it, advertise it, or try and push it, I'm always going to be here, and you know where to find me too.
For sure. Oh, absolutely. I would love to talk about it, and especially share any stuff about like what for those of your listeners and viewers out there that would be interested in knowing, well, what happens when your novel has been optioned, and what's the whole.
That would be pretty cool. Yeah, that's right. Writer's advice. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
As a person who's totally, like I have no idea what's going on. Well, look, I did get a lawyer though, so you get a lawyer. Make sure you do it.
Good. Yeah, make sure it's good.
Yeah, and make sure they're a good lawyer. Yes.
Well, so before I close out, Katie, is there anything else you would like to say that we didn't manage to cover in this interview?
Let's see. Well, okay, here's a little paragraph I wrote there for like final thought. So,
I am all ears. Yeah.
Here we go. If you've always wanted to be a writer, the best way to become a writer is to write, to get at it. So that's the first step. Start writing. Today is the day to start, not tomorrow, not next week, not after Christmas when you're feeling a little, housebound. But if you don't take that first step, you're never going to experience the journey of discovery, both for yourself and the world at large. Because writing is part of what you experience in the world, what you've observed, and that's what all my writing is. It's stuff I've observed and thoughts I've had, and it all just let it. And that's one of the things when you're writing, make sure you don't do a lot of research at the same time. I used to do that, and you get hung up on something, and it's like, oh, I wrote no pages for the last 3 days because I was researching something that was so fascinating. And I do that a lot. When I write, I like to thoroughly research stuff. So again, talking about the research and geology, paleontology, plate tectonics, firearms, to learn about the T-Rex rifle, in which we feature in, of course, Austin Fires. But he hasn't fired it yet. You don't know that. You haven't got that far. Almost a spoiler alert. So
I'm intrigued. I'm definitely going to get there.
So it's So there's all the research that goes into it, and I like to try to share what I've learned with my readers, and again, it's about grounding your novel in reality, of course. But so if you don't take that first step, you'll never experience. And I got to say, writing for me, when I'm writing stuff, and I've written that raw paragraph, and then I go back and I look at it. This is before going over it again and again and again. But when I come back at it, and then you say, oh, look, this doesn't quite work here. And then it's like you take a chunk of the paragraph, you put it up here, and you move this around. It's like almost like a jigsaw puzzle. I just love that part. And you're putting, or even reorganizing the chapters after you've written it. It's like to bring it all into the order that you somehow know it should be in, I suppose. But then when it clicks, and then you sit back and you go, oh, okay. And that's when I go on and I write the next chapter. I write it, and then I go back through, and oh, by the way, biggest tip I can give to anybody that wants to ever have a book as an audiobook too, listen to your writing. Don't just read it back. Don't print it out. Printing it out is good. You can make notes on it and stuff, but don't just do that, because that's what Claw, and I had a lot of little things that I missed in Claw that I had to correct initially. But the copies now that everybody has, they're all really good. But the initial copy had a couple of, bloopers, we can call them, right? But yeah, make sure that you, where's he going? Be true to yourself. Write what you want to write. Don't take no for an answer. Gosh, I'm sure there's a few more things I could think of talking about.
You were talking about audiobooks, and I think that there was a tip for audiobooks as well.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. That was it. Yeah. Listen to your writing. That was it. Sorry. Thank you. Make sure that you, I have a Mac myself, and it has an incredible option to listen to using any of the Siri voices to read back your text. I use Scrivener to write, or Scrivener, depending where you're from, to write all my stuff in. And with that, I can just put the cursor at the top of the paragraph of the chapter that I'm in, and I let my Mac read it back to me. And I love that because sometimes I have people with Irish accents. Right now I have an Irish guy reading it to me. I've also had like a small child. It sounds like a little girl reading it to you. Oh, pardon my finger there. And it's so much fun to listen to it, and that you would be surprised the things that you'll catch so quickly, the errors. And that I found that when I come back, because you listen for flow and how it sounds, and when I come back and have to do the final edits, I find that it's a lot easier because you've already listened to what you've written after you've written that chapter, let's say, as I'm saying. But it makes such a difference listening to what you've written. So that's my big tip.
What an incredible tip. I never would have thought that, just kind of let your computer play back for you what you just wrote. Because I mean, whenever you were talking about 3 out of the 5 of your senses, and whenever you're writing, I imagine that you're using your vision a whole lot. And then I imagine that there's some auditory exclusion going on. But then whenever you kind of sit there, you can listen to that voice, and as you said, the flow and everything, I imagine, it's probably a different experience.
Oh, it is. And I got to say, I really like to listen to my jokes, as I call them, the humor that I have.
Yeah.
Novels. I like it when I hear something like that. And I know that it works. If I keep hearing the thing and 20 and 30 times later that I've heard it, still makes me kind of chuckle. I know it's funny. So it's like good rule of thumb, I guess, is if you still find it funny after editing it, how many
listening to it. Yeah.
It's got to be good.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, Katie, that has been this has been a very enlightening chat with you, and I really, really appreciate the insights, and man, that's some great news too. I really, really hope that that I can see Claw, that I can be watching my streaming service, and kind of watch those characters come out. I can't wait for that day.
I would so be interested to see what they would come up with, and that's one of the things when I write too. I always imagine what it would be like, how my novel and everything I've written is perceived by all the other people that read it, because every person is going to bring their own set of values, perceptions to the novel, of course, when they read it. And that's one of the things I should mention, how I view writing. It's a programming language, is what writing is, if you think about it. Because what is the human brain but a computer, of course, right? It's a biological computer. And when I write a story, I'm coding a story. I'm coding program that you're going to upload into your computer when you read my story, of course. And you're going to parse all that information and view it in your own internal holodeck in your brain. And what I've always thought would be interesting to know, all the different versions of Trip that, how do people see Trip? How do all these people see Austin, all the different versions. And I guess I'll figure out what the one that Hollywood figures. We'll find out. But I like the analogy that it's like it is. It's programming a language, and you're putting a program together that's going to run in your own internal VR system in your head, right? So that's my thoughts.
What you need to do is show up on set and be like the really, really super annoying writer, and you're like, no, that's not how it is, and like insult everyone and just be like this crazy prima donna. Just
oh yeah, I know.
And they have to appease you and stuff because you're the writer, you have rights and stuff.
And that's the thing. But some writers are like that for sure. But I'm
just kind of show up and just bomb the entire process.
Yeah. Well, I would love, yeah, and that happens. That some of them get themselves kicked off the sets, and then that's
Yeah.
filming in this area and not South Carolina, and because I would love to, I'm only like
Oh, yeah.
20 minutes away from either city. So.
Yeah. Well, Katie, thank you so much for being on. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure to speak to you and to all the people that might actually watch this, and hopefully come to my website, check out some of my other writing that I have. There's a free short story, and if you join my my mailing list on my newsletter, every month I make a draw for a free audiobook, and all my books are on audio except for Abandoned Book 4 won't be out until March, so anybody looking for that, it's going to be March 23rd, I think. You can get links for all the audiobooks, and that graphic novel I mentioned, you can check that out on the website too, katieberry.ca.
Well, that is awesome, and I will be sure to put a link in the show notes for us as well, Katie, so they can go see it and click on there and join your mailing list.
Great.
Can't wait for it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.